Hello students, welcome to one more lesson, and let's just start this lesson with a quick recap of what we did in the previous lesson, okay? So in the previous lesson, we added our first theme to our WordPress, and this is not just an HTML file, it is a theme already in the WordPress environment. But if you remember from the previous lesson, if we move over to the front end, you see that everything seems a little broken. So we don't have images, we don't have CSS, we don't have styles and effects. If we, for example, if we inspect this page here, you see why this is happening. If we head over to this console tab, you see that we have a lot of notifications about 404 not found resources. So for example, we don't have images, WordPress cannot find those images, WordPress cannot also find those JS files and also CSS files. And why this happens, it's simply because WordPress doesn't understand those paths here. So it doesn't know how to look for those JS files, for example, inside a JS folder. So where is it? WordPress doesn't know how to behave in this situation. It's the same for the CSS files. You cannot find those CSS files here. And also for the images, it's the same thing. So in order for us to add those resources to WordPress, we need to understand first that WordPress, it's not HTML. So we're not gonna be adding CSS and JavaScript or images in WordPress the same way we do in a pure HTML site. In order for WordPress to understand those CSS and JavaScript files and add them as resources to the theme, it uses another process called enqueuing. That means WordPress puts all of the resources, all of the CSS files in a queue, in a line, one beneath the other. You'll see that in practice later, okay? In order for us to start this process, we will be adding two functions to our index.php file. The first one will be adding it to this portion here of the code before the closing of the head tag. So this first function, it's called, let's call PHP here. And the name of this function is simply wp_head. And there is a counterpart of this function that we can add to the end of the file. So let's move to the end of the file. And right here before the body ending tag, we'll be adding one more function. And this one is called wp_footer. If you save this and take another look at the front end and reload this page here, you see something new here displaying. That is this black bar that is called the admin bar. We can leverage this bar, for example, to customize the theme or edit the posts or pages in WordPress, and it's actually a link to your dashboard. If we see the source code of this page, you see that there are a bunch of things here that weren't there before. If you guys have this curiosity, you can scroll down this page here and see what resources WordPress is adding here, right? But let's move on. Another piece of this process is creating a new file in WordPress called functions.php. So let's go ahead and create that file. Let's add it to this minifolio folder. So let's add a new file, and this one is called functions.php. Pay close attention because the name has this S at the end, okay? All right, let's start this file with the opening tag of PHP. We don't need to end this PHP tag, okay, because we'll be actually only writing PHP code here. So there's no need for us to close this PHP tag. And what are the function of this functions.php file? It's a very special file in WordPress, and you can use it to do a lot of things. So for example, you can use it to register your menus. You can use it to add your CSS files, your JavaScript files. You can use it also to add a lot of special supports in your theme. You can use it to register widget areas, a lot of things. So it's a kind of a plugin, but it only works whenever your theme is actually active. Let's use it first to add our CSS files, to put those files in our queue. And in the next lesson, we'll be adding our JavaScript files. So let's start with the CSS files. Let's go over to our index.php again. And what we'll do is we'll be cutting this part of the code here with the links to the CSS files. And let's move them to this functions.php file. It's just temporary, okay? We'll be using this code here as a reference to us. So the first thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna create a function. So let's call it function. The name of this function will be minifolio scripts. And to actually add the first CSS file to our queue, to our line, we'll be leveraging a function, a WordPress function called WP Enqueuing Style. Pay close attention because this name here is not styles. It's not in the plural, okay? It's just style. A lot of students make this mistake, write this function in plural, and they don't understand why WordPress is not loading those CSS files. And once I'm using a VS Code extension called IntelliFence, I'm seeing the arguments belonging to this function. So we have the first argument, which is the handle of this file in the queue. And then we have the source. So where WordPress will be looking for the actual file. And then we have some optional arguments to this function. The first one is dependency. We'll not be using this now. We'll be talking about dependency in the next lesson, and we'll be talking about how to add JavaScript files, because the function used to add JavaScript files is very similar to this one here. Another argument is the version. It's a string telling WordPress what is the version of this file we'll be adding to the queue. And the last one is the kind of media, the type of media of this resource we'll be adding to this queue. By default, it's all, right? But we'll be passing only the first and the second argument. This first one is the handle. So let's use, for example, minifolio bootstrap CSS, because the first file we'll be adding, it will be this one here, the CSS for the bootstrap. And the second argument is the source. We'll be using a WordPress function called get template directory URI. And what this function does is it helps WordPress get the path to our folder. So instead of hard coding this path, for example, passing app, public, WP content, themes, minifolio, we'll be using just this function here, and WordPress will use it to get the whole path to this minifolio folder, all right? And we can concatenate this with a string that is telling WordPress where in this folder is our file. So it's this string here, so let's use it. One very important thing we cannot forget is to add a trailing slash to the beginning of this string, like this. It's because this function here doesn't offer this trailing slash, so we can never forget to add it manually, all right? You can use another function called trailing slash it to help you add this trailing slash here, but I think the easiest thing to do is to just add this manually. Another thing I'm always asked is, Marcelo, can I use another function? I've actually found another function to help me get this theme folder here. It's not this get template directory URI. Can I use it? Of course you can use it. The fact is that I'm more used to using this function here, so that's why I'm using it, all right? So you can, if you want, you can use another function. And that's it. This is our first file that is actually added to WordPress, and we'll be doing this the next one so you guys can understand this process better. Okay, so let's duplicate this line here, and let's add this one here, this fancy box CSS file. So let's replace this bootstrap with fancy box And let's grab this string and pass it here. It's that simple, guys. Alright, so now you know how to do it. I'll just speed up this video and then we'll go back. And this last one is a bit different because it's not related to a file that is actually inside our theme folder. It's a simple URL, but it's simple to add it to. You just don't need this function here, right? Let's remove all this here and pass this URL as a string. It's that simple, guys. So, all right, let's remove this. We don't need this here anymore. And in order for WordPress to actually add these files to the system, we'll be calling another function here at the end of this function. It's called add action. And it gets two arguments. The first one is a hook name. And what is a hook? It's actually a point in WordPress, a point in the system among the files. And you can use those points of the code to fire any function you want. Let me first just write the code and then I will try to explain to you guys what is happening. So the first argument of this function is the actual hook name. So in order for us to add CSS files or JavaScript files, we use a hook called WP Enqueuing Scripts. This one does have a letter S at the end, okay? And the second argument is any function we want to add to this particular action hook. So it's this function here we have just created. So let's copy this name here and put it here. What we are really trying to say to WordPress is whenever in the WordPress execution, it finds a piece in the code that is our action hook called WP Enqueuing Scripts, we're telling WordPress to add this function next to this point in the code. We say that we fire this function to this action hook. Okay, we add this function to this point of the code, to this action hook. It's more or less what is happening. And what this function that is being fired is doing is just calling this WP Enqueuing style function a lot of times. And in each time, it will be adding one of the CSS files we want to be put in the queue. And it's one beneath the other. First this one, and then this one, and then we find this last one, all right? Let's see this in practice. I think it's easier for you guys to understand. So let's save this, and let's move to our front end. And notice what will happen when we reload this page. And there's a hint for you guys. Always try to reload the page using Ctrl-Shift-R because it will empty the cache at the same time and you get this latest version of the page with all of the resources added to it. So let's use Ctrl-Shift-R here to reload the page. And now we can see the styles applied to our theme and the colors and all the things we needed to actually display the theme. If we look at the source code again and we load this page here, you see now that our CSS files are being put here one underneath the other. So first we have Bootstrap and then jQuery, Fancebox, and then the other CSS files. All right, I hope you guys understood this process. And what more? Now that we added our CSS files, we can also do the same thing to the JavaScript files, because if we click here, for example, we can go to the right section, but it's not doing that smoothly. So it's just leading us to the right place in the page, but without that effect that we saw in the other lessons. All right, so we'll be doing that later in the next video. So see you guys there. Bye.